number 1051 in the Teal hymnal, Rise in Body or Spirit. Child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandmother's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are rulers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of justice and sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and builders of dreams. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandmother's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are rulers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're seekers of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandmother's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Good morning and welcome to our Sunday service. I'm Dawn Huebner, your worship associate for today, serving alongside our guest minister, the Reverend Connie Simon, Ministerial Intern Rosemary Dodd, our music team, Irina, and the man of the hour, just back from sabbatical, rested and refreshed. I think he's probably greeted each one of you individually, and if he didn't catch you, he will certainly catch you after the service. Our very own, the Reverend Roger Jones. Whether you are here in person or participating online, welcome. It is good to be together. If you are participating via Zoom, feel free to click the link to access the order of service. If you're here in the sanctuary, please take a moment to silence your noise-making devices. As we settle into our time together, and in the spirit of beloved community, we honor the Nisenan, Southern Maidu, and Miwok peoples for their enduring commitment to steward this land where UUSS now exists. We recognize that they have never ceded, left, nor ceased to care for this place. There are many ways to connect with this vibrant community. Two good starting points are the Blue Sheet and the Minister's Weekly Message, both of which serve as guides to our many and varied programs. If you are here for the first time, there are tables in the welcome hall out that way to orient you and help you get connected. And there are opportunities to meet one another afterwards on Zoom in breakout rooms or here after the service in the welcome hall or outside if it isn't raining too hard. An announcement from the Justice and Equity team. If anyone from that team is here, perhaps you can rise briefly. The Justice and Equity team invite you to join them in attending a free 2-day Lunar New Year's Eve festival in Elk Grove next weekend, February 10th and 11th. There will be an opening parade on Saturday, food and traditional music both days, and on Sunday, the Miss Vietnam pageant. Asian people are Sacramento's largest minority group. The Lunar New Year is the most important holiday for them and for fully 1/5 of the world's population. You can find information flyers about the event here today or talk to someone from the Justice and Equity team. Also next weekend, on Sunday, February 11th, please stay after the service for UUSS Meet and Greet in the FOS room, where you can meet and greet a member of our leadership team, people serving in leadership roles, and learn about how you might get involved. That's just a sampling of what's going on. There's also a chance to learn about Proposition 1, which will appear on the March ballot. There's the Crone Connection, a poetry discussion, and more. And again, you can check the blue sheet for details. And now for his first time speaking from our pulpit in 5 months, here's Reverend Roger to tell you how you can get involved in lighting the future at UUSS.
Thank you, Don. Good morning.
Good morning, Rod.
It's good to see all of you. It's good to see familiar faces and a lot of new faces. And I've met some of you and hugged a lot of you. And as Don said, I look forward to connecting in the minutes and hours and days to come. It's wonderful to be back. I've missed you. My sabbatical was a wonderful experience, including travel and study and rest. When I first saw our music director the other day here, Anthony asked me if I had been refurbished. And I'm not really sure if I have been refurbished. I don't think 5 months is quite enough time for that. But I do feel refreshed, and I'm ready to be here and be back. This week, I've been learning about all of the energy and progress and creativity that have been going on here. And speaking of energy, I hear that we are going solar. Solar panels are coming to this church in late spring, resulting in a reduction of our shared carbon footprint and saving us on utility expenses, estimated saving us about $680 a month. And of course, it will make us even more cool than we already are. The solar panels will pay for themselves in about 9 years. And in this month of February, we are all invited to donate toward this project. The fundraising goal for Lighting the Future is $40,000, which is half of the project cost. A generous bequest from a departed member will cover the other half. And as of Thursday, I believe we had received 3 advanced donations totaling about $5,500. So we're already 14% of the way toward our goal. Our warm and sunny fundraising volunteers include Sandra Navarro, who will be staffing the table in the welcome hall today, and Gina Guarneri and Bobby Keel and Anara Gard. They are 3 of the bright lights at UUSS, and they call themselves the Solar Sisters. So to learn more about this project, you can drop off a contribution. You can stop by the solar power table. You can pick up a butterscotch candy, and you can visit our website. And I believe there will be something in the chat if you're on Zoom right now. Together we can light the future at UUSS. And I got back on campus this week, and I've been very busy getting caught up about what's been going on. And I'm glad to be back on the job, but I do have a worry that I might not remember how to write a sermon. So fortunately, I don't have to do that this morning. And fortunately, I have invited a wonderful colleague to be our guest preacher today. I'd love to introduce you to the Reverend Connie Simon. Welcome, Connie. Connie is serving as the Interim Minister for the UU Church of Davis. We met a few years ago, and we found out that we are both graduates of Indiana University in Bloomington, as well as Meadville Lombard Theological School, which is our UU seminary in Chicago. Connie has been the president of our Meadville Alumni Association, which includes asking other graduates like me to donate to the school. Connie's very good at that because she is known and loved across the denomination and admired for her commitment to our faith. An avid history fan, Reverend Connie is the co-chair of the UU Studies Network and the editor of the Dictionary of Unitarian and Universalist Biography, which is a very handy and fascinating online resource. She's also the newly appointed leader of an annual event of Unitarian clergy dating back to 1825, which is called the Berry Street Essay. And this is such a traditional old event that the leader of the team that puts on the Berry Street Essay is called the scribe. So this is your scribe. And Connie is the secretary of the board of the UU Ministers Association, and she serves as a conflict coach with a program of our denomination called Hope for Us. Most importantly, she's beloved by a number of nieces and nephews and her 8-year-old dog, whose name is the Reverend Dr. Janeetha Ridley, which I'm very curious about. So welcome to you, Connie. And during the music for centering, you are invited to light a candle and fill out a prayer card if you like, so that we can include your joy or concern in the spoken prayer following the music for centering. So again, welcome. the chalice this morning, and Reverend Connie will offer the words for the chalice lighting.
Charlie told me he's done this before. We light our chalice, the chosen symbol of our faith, with these words by Tim O'Brien. Stories are for joining the past to the future. Stories are for those late hours in the night when you can't remember how you got from where you were to where you are. Stories are for eternity, when memory is erased, when there is nothing to remember except the story.
For the continuation of story, we're going to invite all those involved in RE, children and adults alike, to make their way out to the welcome hall as we tell a little musical story for you, which is, we gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other. In front with love. The other one. One foot in front. One foot and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love.
We hold so many joys and sorrows. Take a minute to settle into this space, however feels best for you. A deep breath, a stretch. Whatever's right. I bring joys from our community. Tara shares that my birthday was in January, and I am 10 now. Bronte shares, on Wednesday, I'm going on a 3-day camping field trip with most of my friends. I'm jealous. Sean Fountain shares the joy that he's grateful to have an excellent study group in law school, full of outspoken rebels. Archer Fountain shares a joy. I like that we are all connected. Renee Scott Feminella shares a joy. I began art workshops at Creation District for the homeless youth who stop in as a healing outlet, and it is so beautiful. Lily shares a joy. My joy is I drove a car and I didn't crash. Yes. Cassie shares the joy. Being together, family, friends, and those we are getting to know has brought me and the kids great joy. One among us shares the joy. I got to go to Napa with my dad, and we got to see a lot. Joys shared are multiplied. Dan Doddrich also shares the joy, happy 65th birthday to my son John Daniels on the 5th, and 71st birthdays to my twin sons on the 13th. When one lives a long life, one often celebrates many loved ones' birthdays. Those among us also bring sorrows. Jan shares the sorrow of the passing of my partner's son, Brian. He was 56. Kurt Schmidt shares a sorrow, remembering Tony Daniels, 2 years gone. He also shares a joy, getting married to Tony's best friend, Julia, on the 24th. One among us is asking for prayers for mental health and healing for complex PTSD. One among us, Terry Ray, is healing well from medical and dental procedures, and her best friend is not in good health and needs prayers for her cancer treatments to work well. One among us is holding Santiago close to his heart as he struggles with life. This person's very independent mother is slowly losing her ability to be safely independent. A new chapter in both of their lives. And this person shares that a loved one has been suffering from bronchitis for a week now. With all of these joys and sorrows, we hope that sharing the sorrow makes them a little bit lighter, just as sharing the joy makes it a little bit larger and brighter.
Thank you. As we open our hearts to receive all that has been spoken and all that is on our hearts in our community right now, I invite you to join me for a time of centering together in meditation and in prayer. Wherever you might be at this moment, pause to notice your body. Notice where it is making physical contact. Notice that it is sustained as the earth sustains us all. And notice your breathing as a breath in lifts our torso up and out, the breath of life. And now together, let us take a deep inhale breath and then pause for a moment and then exhale deeply. In. And now a deeper breath, inhaling, pausing, and exhaling deeply. And as we continue breathing together, let us open ourselves to the spirit of divine love and the embrace of human kinship as I offer these words. O Spirit of life and Spirit of love, be with us today and renew our spirits for the days ahead of us. During this time of extreme winter weather, Our care goes out to those at risk from the heavy rainfall and strong winds throughout California, as well as harsh weather in other places. We remember those who protect the most vulnerable and provide help to those in need. As widespread suffering continues in the conflict in the Middle East, we continue to grieve so much loss of life, including thousands of children. We remember the Israeli hostages continuing to endure captivity and their loved ones keeping vigil. We remember the Palestinian families agonizing over the loss of homes, parents, children, and friends, and those now at great risk of perishing as the war continues. We also call to mind the strife and suffering which the people of Sudan and Ukraine are experiencing. We strive to extend our compassion to all who suffer. We grieve the recent loss of 3 American service members last week, and we lift our hearts in concern for everyone who is in harm's way. In the face of growing tension and violence, let us pray for peace. We ask for the courage and the strength to work for the dignity, the liberty, and the safety of all members of the human family. We long for mercy for everyone suffering and living in fear. We send strength to all who need it. When we are upset and worried about our communities, our country, our world, remind us that we are not alone in our concerns and our hopes. Remind us that we can make a difference when we join together with others in the spirit of respect and love for the cause of justice and peace. O Spirit of life and Spirit of love, you breathe in us and connect us with one another, with all people in the world and with all creatures in every part of this planet Earth. Help us to feel grounded by these connections. On this day and in the days to come, let us remember to rejoice in all occasions and moments that remind us that life is a gift. Renew us through the simple gift of gratitude. Let us endeavor to do what we can to help, to give, to love. So may it be. Blessed be, and amen. Now let us take a few moments for our personal meditations or private prayers, which will be followed by a gift of music. Blessed be.
Always it is easier to pay homage to prophets than to heed the direction of their vision. It's easier blindly to venerate the saints than to learn the human quality of their sainthood. It's easier to glorify the heroes of the race than to give weight to their examples. To worship the wise is much easier than to profit by their wisdom. Great leaders are honored not by adulation, but by sharing their insights and values. Grandchildren of those who stoned the prophet sometimes gather up the stones to build the prophet's monument. Always, it is easier to pay homage to prophets than to heed the direction of their vision. Clinton Lee Scott.
Invite you to rise in body or spirit to join in singing Our World is One World, 134. Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate we make a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. The way that wealth affects us all, the way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Generosity is one of our spiritual practices. Our congregation has a practice of giving away half of each Sunday's offering to an organization that is working to heal the world. For February, our community partner is Planned Parenthood Marmonti? I'm not from here. Marmonti. This organization delivers vital reproductive health care, sex education, and information to millions of people worldwide and right here in Sacramento. In addition to family planning services, they provide care for transgender people and any care related to sexual health, well-being, and reproduction. Did you know that the Sacramento branch of Planned Parenthood was founded in our church? In the early 1960s, our member Phyllis Gardner became upset that many women and girls from low-income families did not have access to reproductive health care and information, though it was available to those with money. Through her role as president of our Women's Alliance, Phyllis worked with our minister Ford Lewis to hold organizing meetings for Planned Parenthood here at the church. We are so proud. Given the ongoing assault on access to reproductive and sexual health care and sex education, transgender rights, and so forth, our generosity matters as much now as it did 60 years ago. Thank you for your generosity to UUSS and our community partner. This morning's offering will now be given and received. As the ushers come forward, please join in our unison response. May generosity bless our world, and may gratitude nourish our spirits.
Sometimes our heroes aren't heroes. And I'd like to ask my friends in the back to put up a picture for you that you'll see here. I know it's a little difficult to see, but just think about what you're seeing there for a moment. I have been researching my family history. I was excited to learn that my third great uncle, Albert G. Walls, was a member of the 54th Massachusetts Voluntary Infantry, the second African American regiment organized after the Emancipation Proclamation to fight for the North in the Civil War, the same unit featured in the movie Glory. My uncle fought at the Battle of Sault Le Gris Island near Charleston, South Carolina on July 16, 1863. 17 men were wounded, 14 were killed, and 12 never found. A letter from a surviving comrade said that Albert Walls remained at his post and fought until killed or taken prisoner. His body was never recovered. A few years ago at our family reunion, my cousin George, retired U.S. Marine Corps Brigadier General George Hilton Walls, dedicated a marker to our Uncle Albert on land that's been in our family since the 1820s. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. The same year that I learned about Uncle Albert on my mom's side of the family, I also learned about a great-great-grandfather on my dad's side. That's him. My great-great-grandfather, Weary, was enslaved by Thomas L. Clyburn of Kershaw, South Carolina. When the Civil War started, my grandpa followed Clyburn's son Frank into the Confederacy as his personal servant. On April 9, 1865, after Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, my grandpa Weary and his enslaver walked back to Kershaw, returning to the Clyburn plantation. Weary took the last name of Clyburn, married at least twice, and had children. He moved a few miles away across the border to North Carolina and applied for a North Carolina Confederate Class B Negro pension. His application says that at Hilton Head, while under fire of the enemy, he carried his master out of the field of fire on his shoulder, and that he performed personal service for Robert E. Lee. He loved playing the fiddle, and in his later years attended the 50th anniversary memorial at Gettysburg, which is where that photo was allegedly taken. When he died in 1930, he was buried wrapped in Confederate gray. Maddie's 2014 funeral, which is his daughter, was attended by a color guard of Confederate reenactors and members of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, of which Maddie was a member. Thank you. You take the picture down. This was a really hard story for me to learn. It was a really, really hard story. I was so excited about Uncle Albert, but I didn't quite know what to do with Grandpa Weary, especially after I learned that his connection with the Confederacy wasn't just a wartime thing. He had allegedly worn that Confederate uniform after the war on multiple occasions and was buried in it. And as you might imagine, I'm not especially a big fan of the Confederacy. Yet, this man was my second great-grandfather. I guess sometimes our heroes aren't heroes. Maybe this is too far removed for you. Let's bring it closer to home. Let's talk about the Reverend Samuel Atkins Elliott, who became the secretary of the American Unitarian Association in 1898. That was before we had a UUA. We were the AUA. He came to the association at a time when it was in organizational and financial disarray. He gave himself the title of president in 1900 and set about the work of consolidating the National Council of Unitarian Churches and the American Unitarian Association into one cohesive organization of member churches and had a revamped governance model. Cynthia Grant Tucker describes him as the consummate executive who put the loosely run movement on a sound financial footing. Many historians believe that without Eliot, the association might not have survived. He brought wealth, he brought prominent Unitarians to the board of the AUA, all in an effort to get it back on solid financial footing. Under his watch, we got General Assembly, we got increased public advocacy, ministerial credentialing was created, we had a comprehensive Sunday school curriculum, and the association moved into its former headquarters at 25 Beacon Street. He was known for visiting churches all over the country, and I wouldn't be surprised if he hadn't made a trip west every now and then to some of our earliest churches here in California. And he voted against women's suffrage and opposed women in the pulpit. Maybe you've heard of the Iowa Sisterhood. How many of you have? Raise your hand if you have. Oh, Roger. Roger's got some work to do. The Iowa Sisterhood was a group of women ministers who, beginning in the late 1880s, changed the rules of ministry, only to fade into history and largely be forgotten until their accomplishments were rediscovered and brought to light by the publication of Cynthia Grant Tucker's book, Prophetic Sisterhood, Liberal Women of the Frontier. These women ministers were something special. Largely rejected by the establishment, these women mentored, they encouraged and supported one another as they planted new churches throughout the center of the country. They didn't try to be like their male counterparts. Instead, they did ministry a whole new way. They preached equality and responsibility to family. They saw themselves as educators and sought to make church a place of learning not just on Sundays, but throughout the week. They created unity clubs, what we would call today small group ministry, where people could come to discuss the issues of the day. They supported women's clubs that encouraged women to aim higher than just doing domestic chores, teaching them about money management and economic empowerment. Looking beyond the walls of the church, these clubs became part-time social work schools. These women were amazing. They recognized the church's responsibility to the whole of society and believed that the church building, regardless of its architectural style, should be functional and inviting to the community. For example, the church in Kalamazoo, Michigan, even had a gymnasium because they believed that members and attendees who came to the gym would build stronger bodies, and stronger bodies meant stronger families. As Tucker said, it was all about bridging the private and public realms of religious expression and making the prophetic message accessible. And the best part, they didn't incur any debt when they built these new churches. They would save for them and then build them with cash. But our friend Sam Elliott saw absolutely no merit in any of the things they were doing. He thought that women were, quote, poor professional risks, being creatures designed for private life and supportive roles. He said that women could never be preachers or heroes, but as homemakers, they could evangelize to souls within their short reach and fill their lifetimes with small and kindly acts. It took 4 requests before he finally agreed to speak at one of their churches. And I can only imagine how that visit went. Now, Sam didn't think too much better of people of color. He was on the record as saying that blacks were intellectually incapable of understanding Unitarianism. This is evidenced by his treatment of the Reverend Egbert Ethelred Brown, a Jamaican minister and convert to Unitarianism who struggled to found a church in Harlem. Speaking of black people, Eliot said, "The lower classes, Negro and Chinese and various half-breeds, are more nearly brutes than anything I've ever known." End quote. This opinion softened by the 1930s. I guess he'd been around us a little bit more, because during a trip to Florida, he said, "As to the darkies, I can't get enough of them. Such happy-go-lucky, merry, shiftless rascals as they all are. I never get tired of listening to them. I've seen a good deal of them, for they work best with a white man bossing them all the while, and I've had that duty several times." Another difficult story. This man saved Unitarianism and would not have supported my ministry. I was a double strike for him. Black and female? Sometimes our heroes aren't heroes. We idolize these people, building them up into something larger than life. We put them on a pedestal. We do this with all kinds of people, with athletes and entertainers and politicians and even ministers. We create an image in our minds that's based on only a portion of that person's existence. We call them heroes. But I gotta ask, what is a hero? For some of us, the thought of a hero immediately suggests movie or comic book superstars. Superman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, Black Panther. Superhuman creatures that can stop speeding bullets and reverse the spin of the earth. But we know this isn't realistic. They exist only in a mythical fantasy world. They're heroes, but they're not real. Although sometimes I wish they were, because we need Iron Man right now. The more traditional definition of a hero is someone who is admired or idealized for their courage, their outstanding achievements, or their noble qualities. Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, Maya Angelou, these are some of my heroes. People who, through their courage, through their genius, transformed my world. And even they were not perfect. But heroes stand up for what is right and just. They're willing to make the ultimate personal sacrifice for what they believe in, like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was not perfect. Heroes are people of great talent. They have superior innate ability and that special mindset that makes them better than everyone else at what they do. Roger Federer and Serena Williams in tennis. Pavarotti, Beyonce, Prince. Amen. Artists, athletes, and authors who are just way better than anybody else at what they do. Heroes do brave things and daring things for the good of humanity. Firefighters and police officers and soldiers risk their lives every day to protect us. They run toward danger rather than away from it. They could be heroes, but sometimes our policemen aren't. Heroes are people who overcome tragedy, hurdle huge obstacles, and beat the odds to achieve success. The child raised in poverty who manages to make it through a poor public school and get a college scholarship. The adult who holds down 3 jobs while taking care of kids and going to school at night. Heroes are people who are fighting the good fight just to survive. The disenfranchised folks who walk hundreds of miles to reach our southern border and what they think will be freedom in the United States. The cancer patient enduring round after round of chemotherapy and radiation. Sometimes it's not that dramatic. The volunteer who never misses a shift. The parent who always makes sure that the kids have food to eat, clothes to wear, books to read, and a roof over their head and a kiss goodnight. These are our heroes. And again, just because you're a hero doesn't mean you're always perfect or always right. My Uncle James died fighting for the freedom of my Grandpa Weary, who was remarkably committed to the Confederacy that wanted to keep him enslaved. Thomas Jefferson was a founding father of this country. He was also a slave owner who fathered children with a woman he had enslaved. Samuel Eliot was a brilliant organizer. He was also a chauvinist and a racist. Martin Luther King allegedly had several extramarital affairs. Police, as I said, don't always protect or serve everyone. Sometimes they kill us. That volunteer who never misses a shift might abuse their partner or a child at home. Sometimes our heroes don't get it right. Sometimes heroes can be selfish and cowardly and uninformed. Sometimes heroes can be just plain wrong. Sometimes our heroes hurt people. No matter how strong, how brave, how talented, how daring, or how perfect we want them to be, sometimes our heroes aren't heroes. And what do we do with that? What do we do with our problematic heroes and forefathers and ancestors? We could just ignore them or erase them or pretend they didn't exist. But that doesn't make any sense at all, because they did exist. And if they were our family, we wouldn't be here without them. John Beckett, writing about dealing with the legacy of his Confederate ancestors, says, "Very few people are completely bad or completely good, and most were a product of their times and their circumstances. To erase someone from the ancestral line just because they don't meet our standards of ethics and morality is harsh and potentially unjust. There may very well be something in your life that your descendants will look back on 150 years from now with discomfort or even revulsion." Ouch. Maybe we could just leave out the bad parts and only tell the good stuff. That doesn't work either. Beckett says it only whitewashes the very real harm that our troublesome ancestors created. And some of us carry very deep and very real emotional and even physical scars from family abuse. Other ancestors created and perpetuated institutions that continue to cause harm long after they're gone. Ignoring that harm makes recovery even more difficult. You can't fix what you won't address. Besides, it's dishonest to pretend someone was heroic when in reality they were just mean. Beckett instead calls for a third approach that's grounded in both duty and honesty. He calls us to honor our troublesome ancestors for the things they did well and the things that benefit us today. And at the same time, it insists that we not ignore what they did wrong. If they hurt us, our first obligation is to recover from that wound. And if that wound is too deep or too fresh, we may only be able to offer them the most perfunctory veneration. If they hurt others, our obligation is to make things right. Discontinue hurtful family practices and begin helpful ones. Disempower and dismantle harmful institutions. In doing so, we begin to repair the damage they caused and make it possible to eventually offer them veneration that is both full and honest. This makes sense to me. It's not easy, though, and it's going to take some hard work. But what if we just changed our way of looking at things? We can't just see one side of our so-called heroes. It doesn't tell the whole story. It gives us a flat, one-dimensional view, one that's not helpful or accurate, one that perpetuates ignorance and harm and systems of oppression. What if we stopped looking at each other and at our history as either all good or all bad, and started seeing it in all its shades of complexity? What if we told all the stories that we know and looked at them from all sides? What if we gave them context? Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Adichie writes, "A single story perpetuated by those in power can become a dominant story." Instead, she urges us to seek a more varied, more complex set of stories. I believe we need to start looking for and listening to those multiple stories if we ever hope to reach greater understanding of our history and our ancestors. Once we've done that, then we can do the work that Beckett describes. We can truly honor the parts of them that were indeed good and heroic. We can accept the parts that weren't so good, and we can work on repairing the damage they did to us and to the larger community. Beckett asks one last question. Does this good work rehabilitate our problematic ancestor souls, wherever those souls may be? He calls that a metaphysical question best left for another time. What is certain, he says, is that this work rehabilitates the ancestral line of which you are a part and builds a better world for your descendants. As for me, I'm still struggling with Grandpa Weary, still struggling with Samuel Eliot, and I'm learning to embrace the complexity of their lives and understand their multiple stories. I'm learning to look for the multiple stories within every person I encounter. I'm learning to be comfortable with the fact that sometimes my heroes aren't heroes.
Rise in body or spirit, encounter our blessings and our faults, and explore all of those in a wider story. Come, thou fount of every blessing. Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our hearts with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful. May we still thy goodness prove. Come, thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war fall silent, feel our love glow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our
As we prepare to extinguish the chalice, please join in speaking our shared intention. We extinguish this flame, but we carry the light, love, and commitment of this gathering into the days to come.
Reverend Connie, thank you so much. Thank you. And now, as we prepare to depart, prepare to connect, we invite you to reach out your hands to us as we reach out to you, reach out to one another. If you're at home, please reach out to us as we reach out to you. May you depart in peace and be led forth in courage and in joy. And for all who see God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. And for all who seek a right path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step, one day at a time. Blessed be.